Massive tune, Rema on the upside. Kilebu, let's get into our conversation with Phoebe Nyashanu. We're chatting cars right now on Channel Africa. Phoebe!
Hi. Sorry about the mess up earlier. We had a bit of a problem with technical difficulties.
The only apology you need to be making is not inviting us when the events for cars are happening. Darling, let's talk about...
Hurry!
Do you understand? So let's talk about content creation, automotive content creation in Africa. What is the current scene at the moment from your perspective?
You know, I think, first of all, a lot of us are so blessed and lucky to be in South Africa because it has a booming automotive industry. And I know it may not be it may not be going as well as we would like it to. But I mean, July was recently one of the best months that dealerships across the country have had since 2014, since pre-COVID. Sure. And so we're in a very unique place where we're able to shape the industry from an automotive perspective, but also from a content creation perspective, where see what the trends are and we can shape how people perceive them.
So, Phoebe, speaking of shaping, the job of an influencer is literally to influence my choices in my everyday life. Do you find that the content you make as a content creator really does go that far? Are you literally helping people choose their next car? Or how are people responding to your content? What is it that they say to you when you meet them on the streets or even online?
I think to answer your first question, it definitely has an influential bias to it, because I always take the job of being in a place where I've got a huge network, I've got a huge platform, a huge audience, and people who consume that content with the intention of paying hundreds of thousands, if not millions of rand to purchase a vehicle. I take that very seriously. Sure. And so I do find that the content that I make also translates that way. I often have people reaching out to me asking what car they should buy. And it's always such a fascinating experience because cars are so personal to us and our needs and the things that we want to portray and how we want to be perceived by everybody else.
So what are some of the elements that you guys focus on as car content creators? Because the moment you start talking about engines, you know, you speak to a different market, but then some people are talking about size, speed, petrol, you know, how much fuel it requires, the type of tank it is. So what do you focus on? Do you have like a specific template for the different cars that you guys get?
I do. So when I'm making a review, I often try to touch on as many things that when you are shopping for a car, you would look at. So I'm looking at exterior styling, interior styling, the things that you need to know where something is. You know, something that happened to me when I bought my first car was I was at the petrol station and I could not for the life of me find where to open the fuel tank. And I'm sitting there and I then had to Google it. So now when I think about things like that, I want to be able to communicate to people who also like the engine specs, the kilowatts, the Newton meters, because I find that interesting. But something that I'm really trying to incorporate into my content, especially this year, is to be able to speak to more women and the things that matter to women. And I realized that for a lot of us, it's not necessarily the tech, the specs and, you know, the really technical aspects of things, but it's what the car can do for you, how it elevates your lifestyle. And I understand that can apply to a lot of men as well. But for women specifically, we've got very specific things that we look at. Like, can my cup holder fit a standing cup? It sounds like it's not important, but it is. And then when we look at safety, safety is not just the airbags. It's how many compartments are in this car where I can put my handbag. And in the case of an impact, it's not going to fly and hit me in the head. So it's stuff like that.
Sure. There's banter and chats online about, you know, the Content Creator Awards that are coming up and how some people have been nominated, but they're not necessarily knowledgeable about the actual cause. They're just good at making the content. What is your stand on that? How do you strike a balance between being an actual entertaining content creator and also having the knowledge to inform and to educate people about the car that they could be buying?
That's a brilliant question. And you know what I have always been told about being able to recognize whether you understand something is you being able to communicate it to someone who knows nothing about it. So it's one thing to have a PhD in astrophysics. It's another thing to be able to explain astrophysics to someone like me who knows nothing about it. So whenever I communicate cars, I always try to put that in the same context as sorry about that. Whenever I try to make content about cars, I try to make it as understandable as possible. So that means I'm looking at how I can explain kilowatts versus Newton meters. How does that help me? Don't tell me that my car has a towing capacity of 3,500 kilograms or a payload of 3,000. Tell me you can tow your boat. You can tow your caravan. Now we're talking. Don't tell me it's got 500 Newton meters. Tell me when you're going up a very steep hill, those steep hills that we have in Joburg, this car is going to be able to do that better than that car. Now we're talking. So I can communicate 500 Newton meters versus 200 Newton meters. What's the difference between that? How does that change how I am able to use the car?
Phoebe Nyashanu, we're going to continue the conversation right here on Channel Africa. We just need to go to sports and to econ news. It is 4:30 right now on The Upside. Let's check in with Zycon with our latest in sports. 19 minutes to 5 p.m. CAT. Let's continue our conversation with Phoebe Nyashanu. We're chatting cars this afternoon, as you know we do every single Tuesday.
Because we drive you guys crazy. Phoebe, welcome back. Phoebe is going to tell us all about, if there's one thing I actually want to know, and what I see a lot is the events and how much effort they put into automotive events. They're not
massive.
playing. They are not here to play. So honestly, I can't wait to hear more about it. Phoebe, so you're currently at an event, and the one event that I actually want to know more about is your trip to Beijing, right? They took you guys on this amazing trip for like 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Let's just talk about let's just talk about the, technological advancements in the automotive industry. I mean, you guys probably have the tea about what's really coming in this industry.
Girl, we don't even have like a full picture in South Africa of what is possible when it comes to cars. And going to Beijing, I've lived in China also, and I've seen what those guys can do. They're so innovative in the way that they build things. But I think that from what I saw in Beijing, what the challenge actually is now is being able to integrate technology at such a high level into a country that doesn't have as much infrastructure as what they have. So I'll give you an example of like autonomous driving. So cars in China can drive themselves. I think we've seen that with the Teslas and the Waymo taxis in the US. They've got lots of cars that can drive themselves. But that kind of technology is based on infrastructure being consistent and being present. So for example, road markings, the road signage, things like that are required for a car to be able to drive itself. If you drive a very modern car that has, for example, what's it called? Traffic sign recognition. The events that I'm at today, their updated cars actually have that. You will notice that for sometimes it doesn't recognize the speed limit, maybe because the sign is scratched a little bit, it hasn't been maintained, or that your car will try to veer you into a different lane. If you have lane assist, it will try to get you into a different lane because it's reading a very faded line on the road and it can't keep doing that. Now imagine if you were not behind the wheel. Well, how was that going to be? But then in China, those kinds of challenges no longer exist on the scale that they exist here. So automotive technology that comes from China is actually trying to be integrated in a way that can be used here in South Africa, because they're so far ahead and we're still kind of trying to catch up as the rest of Africa. It's not a South African problem.
From a content creation perspective, how do we compare with Asia in terms of the space that you are in from a car and a content perspective? What are some of the gaps or maybe opportunities that you see?
I think one big thing that I've noticed is that, and it was more to do with the European market, but I'll start with Asia to align with your question, in that the way that they consume content is a bit different because they're a very big streaming market. So people are consuming information as it's coming out. So instead of what we did here where we're at the event and then I'm going to go home and decide maybe I'm going to edit the video later and then they are streaming as it is happening, and people are consuming as it that is happening. So that's sort of one thing that really happens with very fast-paced environments, I think. People are consuming it as it's happening, and then that's it, and then you move forward. So the competition is on a different scale, where the streamers are fighting for people's attention at that present time. Whereas you can watch my video and then you'll go and watch someone else's video after that, and we'll still get the same views, or we still have your views. So that's different.
Yeah, I like that you spoke from a content creation perspective. Let's talk maybe the automotive industry. What more do we, or rather they need to be doing to kind of accelerate? I mean, you already made like a very, you put it in a very polite way that, guys, please fix your road problems. Because now the cars that they're doing that side, you can't bring them here because that pothole already hasn't been fixed in 4 years, girl. So what do you think the automotive industry needs to be doing to kind of accelerate the uptake in their technological advancements in the vehicle industry?
It's definitely the actual need of investing back into South Africa. That's the biggest and most important thing. So BYD last year signed an agreement with Eskom to install over 200 public chargers by October of this year. So in the space of a year, they need to have installed all these chargers. And if you know, BYD is an electric vehicle company for the most part. So they'll bring in EVs and PHEVs, meaning people need to be able to charge those cars. But don't bring me a product and then not give me a way of using your product. Then I won't take up the product, right? So that investment back into local infrastructure really helps. And that means it's not just creating jobs where people are assembling the cars. It's also in being able to say, this is something that we're not going to see a return on investment in the next 10, 15 years. But we realize that we have a stake in this country that needs to be built, that needs to be developed. So they can work with the Ministry of Transport to be able to build better roads, more roads, and to make better signs and markings and things like that. So that's how they actually invest into a future where their companies do better.
Phoebe Nyashanu, where do we catch you? Where can we find you? We are enthralled and we absolutely love you.
Thank you so much. You know, this has been very refreshing because I don't get to talk about things this deeply. But you can find me on Instagram at Miss Nyashanu, and you can find me on YouTube at Piston Me Off.
Follow. Phoebe Nyashanu is the name, and she's just such a rock star in the content creation space as well as in the car industry. It is The Upside on Channel Africa.